Giannis Antetokounmpo is staying with the Milwaukee Bucks. The two-time NBA MVP has signed a max 5-year contract extension. It's a record $228 million, point two to be exact. And this is according to ESPN. And there's an opt-out for the fourth year. Just real quickly, because I know there's plenty of teams that were really disappointed. I heard the Heat were disappointed. I heard even the Lakers were trying to somehow make a run, or they're discussing it. I don't.
Warriors
really
were talked
Warriors,
about too.
Yeah. And it was interesting because this perspectives on this was really good for the league in terms of small markets. But hey, even the Chicago Bulls, they're not a small market team. At the same time, I guess my point is that I know how the league works. I mean, the sexiest team sells. I mean, look at the Miami Heat, the superstars. They were billed as the villains of the league because they had 3 stars on their team. Same thing with Golden State, as Richard Deitch will allude to in the interview you'll listen to later this week. With Giannis staying in Milwaukee, from a league standpoint, is that good for the league? Separate from him selling tickets in the Milwaukee market, because him just staying within the East going to Miami, I mean, that's a power team with him and Jimmy Butler. But staying with the Bucks, they don't get that much media attention. I don't know how the ratings are per se. My guess is that they're not really lighting the league on fire in terms of being a massive draw. And Deitch explained that, that doubleheader on Thursday nights, they have a hard issue of getting people to watch. And usually it's an Eastern Conference game 9 times out of 10. So with Giannis staying in the Eastern Conference, I mean, for the next, 4 to 5 years, they're going to be banking on him to be kind of the face of that doubleheader. I can see, the Bucks being the doubleheader against like the Knicks, the Heat, whatever, the 76ers, etc. Do you think this is going to be something that helps the NBA in terms of him staying with the Bucks, or do you think it could potentially hurt the league because he's still playing for a smart market, or does that even matter anymore?
I think it's a huge plus for the league because you have markets that are going to watch basketball no matter what. Like no matter who is on the Lakers, we saw them struggle for almost a decade, good at least 6 years or so, where it was a pretty bad product. And some of that was saved by Kobe being on the team. But point being that in Los Angeles, people are going to watch the Lakers specifically, no matter who's there. In New York, people are going to watch the Knicks, no matter who's on that roster. Maybe not always a larger market on television, but there's going to be a large market for that in general. Same thing like on the East Coast, like people are always going to tune in to the Celtics no matter who's on that team. So I think, if you think about like LeBron's time in Cleveland, when he left the Cleveland Cavaliers to go play for the Heat, the local economy of Cleveland was crushed by that for the next few years after that. I mean, he had such a huge influence on like sports bars near the stadium and just industry in general in Cleveland. So I do think it is a big deal that, a team like Milwaukee, who historically has been spurned before in the past, like say by Ray Allen and then even more so Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, it's nice for them to get the win here, so to speak, by keeping Giannis. I think it's a huge plus for the league, but I also don't want to look at this with too rose-colored glasses, I guess, because what we're seeing with superstars lately, like if you look at the James Harden situation, and I'm not saying these guys are the same by any means, but players still hold so much power in this league, and if the Bucks don't keep progress going to Giannis's liking, I mean, he can power his way out of Milwaukee. I don't care how many years are left on his deal. That's just the reality of things right now and public relations towards these players. But I do think this is a huge positive, and I do think Giannis is sincere in wanting to be there. I think it sounds like from all interviews and other media that's out there about this. I mean, Giannis is very appreciative to the franchise, the Bucks franchise, for taking him in and for taking a chance on him in the draft and kind of building him up to this point. So all the pressure is now on Mike Budenholzer to get this team further in the playoffs. I mean, that's what we all know where the pressure is here. But I don't know. What do you think about Giannis staying in Milwaukee? I mean, do you agree with me that it's kind of a win to have a more engaged kind of Milwaukee area in the NBA who might not otherwise be engaged without him? Or do you think this is kind of a missed opportunity by Giannis in staying there?
It's such a double-edged sword, right? Because as we talked about with James Harden last week, being loyal to a market for so long, if you don't win the title, you're seen as a loser, and if you go to the team that's a contender, you're seen as a sellout. I mean, what do you really do? So
Right.
it's a catch-22 situation. I will say for Milwaukee and for the competitive balance of the league, I do like him staying there. But the sexiest story is him going to a team with other superstars. What can I say? Or, I think I would say playing with a big market, it does add a sexier appeal to it. I mean, look at Derrick Rose is an excellent example of that. I mean, I love Derrick Rose, but I think, in my opinion, and I'm a huge fan of his. I think he was kind of overrated, and I think to me, if you take a look at Derrick Rose on like a different team, like if he's playing for the Atlanta Magic, I don't know if he's MVP. Maybe he is, but in terms of that luster, like it was his jersey was number 3, the biggest seller in the league. I mean, he was extremely popular. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of it had to do with just that Bulls shine, that luster playing for that team in his playing style, and also because he was from that city. So I think looking at Giannis, time will tell if this is a mistake. I think how it goes in this league. Coaches get fired first. So ultimately, with Budenholzer, if they suck and if they're a disappointment, he's the first to go. And I think from there, you'll see some changes around the roster. And if that doesn't work, I think then he'll, like you said, Matt, request a trade, even if he has years left on his contract. I mean, that's what we're seeing now with James Harden, right? I mean, you put it best, and you've always mentioned this. I mean, he still has 2 years on his deal. So we're still hearing about him wanting out immediately. So
Hmm.
overall, with Giannis, I think it's good for the league. He stays there. I think it's good for ratings ultimately, even though he's not going to like a sexier market. At least you have like a hometown team you can build a base around. But it is, if they're not, I'll put it this way: these next 3 years are critical. Like this year, we'll break down in our season preview for the Bucks. Like they pretty much have to make it to the NBA Finals or like the Eastern Conference Finals, like and lose in 7 games. Like there is no tomorrow, and I think they have a lot more pressure compared to a team like the Brooklyn Nets and even the Boston Celtics. Like I just think with this contract and what the expectations are with the Bucks, if anything short of that, there's going to be some massive questions and there's going to be some massive pressure on Giannis because we really haven't seen that so much. I think after the bubble, this was the first time where Giannis took a lot of criticism, and it's only going to get louder if they fail to meet expectations for this upcoming season.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said there. And I think another point that I'll add that I think is really nice about the league right now is that to me, it feels like if you want to, so we all know about LeBron and what he's doing right now, how he's building on his legacy. Everybody knows that. But to me, it feels like if you want to know the entire narrative of the league or the very, very vast majority of significant playing that's happening in legacy building, you have to tune into Giannis, and I think you have to tune into Luka Doncic in the Mavs. So basically, point being is there are huge, bright, young stars all over the map, all over this country. So I think the league is in a really healthy place, and to me, that's why I love Giannis staying in Milwaukee because to me, the league itself doesn't get healthier if he goes to the Lakers. I mean, maybe it's okay if he goes to Miami in a way, but if he goes to one of these like mega franchises, I mean, unless it's like the Knicks, since that there's a performance boost element. If he goes to the Lakers, in my mind, that is the worst possible scenario. And if he goes to the Warriors, that's in my mind the second worst scenario, just because it's not building interest around his legacy. It's kind of diminishing that, in my opinion. So I think the league is in a good, healthy place with that. And keep in mind, it's not like Giannis is really tied down, even though a contract suggests that. The Bucks will still be under pressure to perform, like you talked about.